Welcome back to the channel. Hollywood is disintegrating before our very eyes. The writers are on strike. The actors are on strike. And now we've seen the first pictures of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the live-action adaptation of the Disney classic. And who better than to talk with me about this is Jesse Blaze Snider, lead singer of DILF USA, my bad. A comic book writer, voice of brands. What's going on, Jesse?
How you doing, man? I'm doing great. But oh my goodness, Disney is doing terrible. And I wouldn't have recognized that as a picture of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs unless the headline said it.
Well, the best thing about this story is it's got everything wrong with Hollywood on top of it. It's not creative because you're just remaking a story that you made in the 30s, I believe. There's lying involved. The media try to cover up from Disney, and they're, because everyone's making fun of them. We've got ESG scores dictating the direction of movies in studios, and we likely have an oversized budget, which will get bigger because we obviously have the shutdowns going on with all the actors and writers and everyone going on strike. So this thing, the best time to cancel this movie was once they greenlit it. The second best time is right now because this thing is just going to be mocked and ridiculed for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's really insane. I mean, honestly, they're doing these adaptations. They should look classic. Thematically, you should get a feeling of nostalgia as soon as you see any image coming off of these sets. And looking at that picture, it looks like the set of Descendants Part 7. And for those people who don't have kids and haven't watched the Disney Channel, they do these effervescent, really glowy, colorful. I love the colors, actually, in the terms of these modern Disney films that they do, like High School Musical and stuff. But it doesn't work for remakes of classic fairy tales. And I mean, there's just nothing classic about that image. And they did not manage to encapsulate a single morsel of visual cues from the dwarves. The hats aren't right. Their shirts aren't right. There's like a formality to the dwarves. They're all wearing the same thing. They all have a different color hat. They all have a slightly different personality. These are things that distill characters down to their basic parts so that we can vibe with them in a real way. The reason why people have grumpy shirts on is because that one aspect of his personality is so definitive and based his character that other people are like, yeah, I'm kind of a grumpy personality myself. I'm a little dopey. Yeah, I'm a happy guy. I like Doc. I'm kind of smart. All these little simple things. That's it. Simplicity. That picture of that diverse group of people is just so inanely whatever that it takes away the real distillment of what those characters were meant to represent as different personalities that she was dealing with. And it doesn't work anymore for me.
Doesn't feel like a celebration of Snow White or Disney or anything. For those who don't know, these set photos purported to be from Disney's live-action remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs received backlash from its politically correct depiction of the princess's famed companions. The controversy escalated when Disney spokesperson told the Daily Beast on Friday that the set photos were fake. The photos are fake and not from our production. We're currently trying to have the Daily Mail issue a correction. And it turns out that wasn't actually true. And this is a representation of their version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
It was total word gymnastics. They were like, well, technically speaking, 2 of those people are stand-ins wearing the costumes of the people who are going to be there. But it's not the actual actor. So the only thing that's going to be different is 2 of the faces. But no, these are the outfits, and those are mostly our Seven Dwarfs. So we're right, and this sucks, and you guys went to all this trouble to try to pretend like, oh, no, it's mistaken. Don't worry. We're honoring the thing. No, you're not. You clearly are not.
No, it's so strange. Like, if you did this 15 years ago, obviously before Hollywood decided to set itself on fire, this would feel weird. You'd be like, that's supposed to be Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It doesn't really make sense. It's made by Disney, but it doesn't really match what Disney has done in the past. But once you throw on the lens of today and what's going on with Hollywood and everything that we saw with the Rings of Power, everything that we saw with The Little Mermaid and all these live action remakes that Disney are doing, where really they're not honoring the past. They're not celebrating all these great movies that they made. I went and saw The Jungle Book. The kid that played the lead character was pretty good. I'll give him an A for effort. But it didn't feel better than the cartoon itself. I haven't seen one since then. Why would I ever go see a second-rate version of The Lion King because it's live action when every frame in there is computer generated images anyway. It's still animated.
Yeah, it's so weird, especially because we're living in an age of nostalgia. People have these characters tattooed on their body. People have built businesses around these concepts. On Long Island, there's a Peter Pan diner. And I was driving past it and I'm looking at their image of Peter Pan on their sign. And I'm like, that's not Peter Pan. Not according to the Disney movie that just came out. You know, you're not doubling down on the thing that people have already doubled down on. You know, we went, ooh, bet on that number again. We like that number. And then you went, oh, you like that number? How about this other number?
Yeah, it's like when you get to the Jurassic World movie, and I kind of enjoyed it because I remember being like 17 years old when Jurassic Park came out, and that just being like a mind-blowing movie experience. I'd never seen anything like that before. You've never seen like what felt like real dinosaurs in a movie. You know, when you get to Jurassic World, what do you get? It's basically the same story. You know, two kids get lost. You've got a couple of stuck up or adults with sticks stuck up their butt. You know, eventually they come around, they learn to love the kids, and everyone wins in the end. And then, you know, the dinosaurs don't eat everybody at the end. But you get like the little classical music notes. They discover the Jeeps with the little thing that you remember the little kid putting on his face. You know, and it kind of felt good. Then when you get into Jurassic World 2, and you're like, nah, this is bad.
No, I mean, they're awful. And I mean, the worst thing, I'm doing a geek culture movie countdown with my kids for the summer. We're doing Geek Summer School. We're watching all these movies. We watched Indiana Jones, and we're going to watch the original Jurassic Park. And I just really want to know from my kids, does this movie and the Jurassic World, do they compare? Because for me, there's this one movie where there's dinosaurs, and there's this other movie where somebody was like, you know, drawing pictures of dinosaurs in CGI form, and there's a huge difference between the weight of that T-Rex moving around in Spielberg's first movie and then the dinosaurs showing up in this, you know, the sequels. It misses the mark for me. And it's such a ridiculous thing. You know, this comic book that we're kickstarting right now on Kickstarter, King of Kings, it's all religious figures in a battle of the bands. So we had to take existing people that have a visual representation, and we had to distill them down to their parts and change them enough to make them musicians, but not so much that if you looked at them, you don't remember who they are. Who is that? It's Vishnu. You see, he's got multiple arms. He's got blue skin. He's wearing an outfit similar to his. He's also covered in musical instruments. You know, if I had to adapt
So, Jesse, we're not going to get your interpretation of who this religious figure should have been or who you would have liked them to have been. You're actually going to pay homage and respect to the actual characters?
Yeah.
And who they were?
Just like Snow White is a deity amongst Disney animation fans. I am a huge Disney animation fan. That is one of my favorite things. I've watched every single piece of Disney animation that's ever been made, like in the official capacities, just everything Walt was responsible for. You know, nowadays I see the stuff that I love and I'm interested in, but I am really, really well versed in Disney stuff. And this, it's iconic. You have to take the iconic thing and play with that, not bring in whatever you want. That's not how it works. If you're going to adjust the thing, it really changes its meaning. Like case in point, you know, one of the characters we had to adapt in the thing, it's Thor. And in the classic mythology, Thor has red hair. Thor in Marvel Comics that people have come to know, he has blonde hair. That doesn't mean that when people think about Thor, all of a sudden he has blonde hair. You haven't changed anything. Thor is still known to have red hair. It just so happens that the very unique version that Marvel has made has blonde hair. But now because he has blonde hair and he's different, it has to stand on its own because he's no longer representative of the Thor who's the mythology guy. He's the one with the red hair. And making that change was really kind of a message to the audience of like, this is going to be our version of Thor. And Thor still is Thor. Snow White is still Snow White. This movie is now its own thing, and it's going to be judged completely 100% on its own merits. And
well, that's the problem. It won't be judged on its own merit because it still says Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And it's going to be judged against other adaptations of that. Obviously, the greatest adaptation of all times being the original Disney cartoon.
Well, and that's basically what I'm saying. But at the same time, it literally removes itself from the actual. It
shouldn't be called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If they wanted to make a movie with an ethnically diverse cast of some short people, but not all short people, that were helping to protect a princess that was being attacked, like in a new kingdom, just make it an original thing. It's not like the most complicated story ever.
No, and clearly, like, it's not like Snow White's been banned. Meanwhile, they banned Song of the South, which is has some of my favorite Disney music in it. I never knew as a kid that he was a slave. I thought he was this really wise old man who was really nice to everybody, made me love black people. And I'm sitting there watching this thing, hearing that it's racist. I'm like, Uncle Remus, I like him. I don't understand the way they think. They're completely missing it. I chose comic books. I chose animation, aside from movies and aside from other things that I could do that I thought were superficial. I thought Disney animation and Marvel Comics and DC that we could save the world, that this is what we need people to be paying attention to, heroes trying to make the world a better place. And now they've come into our world and they're behaving as if they're the moral authority and we're a bunch of assholes. They're out of their minds.
Oh yeah, that's the whole thing. Well, we this is what we want the world to be, but we have no influence. Let's go take somebody else's things and let's go change those into what we would like them to be, and that way that can influence the world. It's like it's so transparent. I see exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and it doesn't work. You know, like that new April O'Neil in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which actually I love the design, super cool.
The animation pretty much looks good across the board. Yes.
Yeah, it's really cool looking, but it bothers the hell out of me that they didn't just make a new character. Why can't she be a new character? This short, squat Hispanic, I don't care what she can be, whatever the hell she wants. I don't care, but just give her a different name. Have her be a unique character, and if you sell it to us right, we'll have a new character that we get to add into the comics, and we'll be excited to see when she shows up in animation. And what if April O'Neil gets introduced in the future? But you change the character, and then you're just inviting all these comparisons for no good reason. We already love April O'Neil. It's just so short-sighted and stupid.
Well, it is because it's happening in almost everything that's being remade and rebooted. That's where like the real, obviously, pushback comes from. If this was a creative choice or a directive choice happening here or there, and you're like, well, you know what, Denzel Washington, one of the best actors in the world, I could see why he would play that character, even if it doesn't feel exactly true to what the original was.
It can be done right.
It's so overt what they're doing that it ends up causing this enormous reaction to where you just, I don't want to support that. I don't want to support anything you're doing. Even if you're not doing what you just did there in this, I don't want to support that either. And it's like they're just burning themselves to the ground just so they can have good ESG scores. That's the only thing that I can think of at this point.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I used to think of myself as like a bit of a bleeding heart. You know, somebody that really cares about people, cares about the world. I want to see things get better. But there's apparently this much extreme version of the bleeding heart that's literally like, if somebody suggests that anything should be felt by someone with a bleeding heart, automatically these other group of bleeding heart people, they're like, yeah, immediately, like they just react so fast to any notion that maybe we should be sad and crying about this. And I just think they're really like, they're not being honest about what we should be crying about. And then the audience who's crying about it, they're not paying close enough attention to know that they're crying about all the wrong shit.
Yeah, and then the people that actually want to support the thing are sitting there left out there with their dicks in their hand going, well, I guess I'm going to skip this TMNT movie, even though I thought I loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but these guys have just pissed me off too much. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that thing, they've pissed me off too much. It's funny. I watched this great little video on, it was about this Hulk Hogan and The Rock match, which is a pretty classic match for
WrestleMania.
And something that I didn't know about it was they didn't know what they were going to do until they got into the ring, because they decided that, look, if The Rock's going to dominate the Hulk while he's being booed, that's no good. If the Hulk's going to dominate The Rock while he's being booed, that's no good. Let's go out.
The idea going in was that Hulk Hogan was a bad guy because he was the guy that had come back as the NWO Hulk Hogan. And then The Rock was the good guy because he was the WWF guy. And as soon as they got in there, everyone was chanting Hulk Hogan's name. and they just couldn't believe that they were seeing Hulk Hogan in a WWE ring again. They lost their minds, and Rock went straight heel, and Hulk just stayed in his red and yellow character, even though he's wearing all black.
Yeah.
And it was ended up being one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history.
But the thing of it was, that wasn't like last minute. They were smart enough to recognize, we're going to go out there and we're going to see how the audience reacts. Based on the audience's reaction, that will be the movie we give them. And they had the most successful match of all time because they listened to the audience. They gave the audience what they wanted, a little bit of this from Disney.
They ruined Triple H's main event because nobody could follow that up, even if they were the champion.
Yes,
exactly. Triple H is still mad about that.
It's true. Yeah,
they finally listened to the fans.
It's the truth. And I mean, like, just come on, that way of thinking. I keep referencing wrestling, and I'm not the biggest wrestling fan, but I have a lot of friends who are huge wrestling fans, so I'm always paying attention to what's going on. And I find it very interesting how it goes. You know, you make the heel turn because the audience isn't liking the character. Okay, well, let's try it like this. You know, that idea of being able to pivot based on the audience's reaction to things is crucial to a creative empire. You really want to have a successful creative empire?
Absolutely.
Listen to the crowd of people in front of you.
They try to make Roman Reigns the biggest baby face character or hero character in the company for 3 years straight. He was eliminating everybody. Daniel Bryan didn't get to win the Royal Rumble because of him, and people hated him for it because he was being forced down their throats.
I was pissed about that.
Everybody was, and nobody could stand Roman Reigns because of that, and they rejected him outright. And then what happens? They make him the bad guy, which people saw him that way anyway. And guess what? He's the biggest star they've had since The Rock, probably.
Eventually, it only took them, 10 years of trying to grow Roman Reigns?
It took him a while.
Yeah, well, Vince McMahon, he is sort of a classic example, actually, of resisting the whim of the audience. There was a changeover between, really big, hulking wrestlers to guys who were svelte but had a really good talking bit, the new age of Roddy Pipers that were coming up. And Vince just didn't get it. He didn't get it.
He was a bodybuilder.
Yeah, but the audience got it, and the audience is sitting there telling you exactly what they want, exactly what you should do, and it hurt them for a long time. All this competition that has sprung up against WWE, it came from him being obtuse and unwilling to adjust with the times and give the audience what they were looking for.
All right, so the big question is, you've got King of Kings fully funded right now on Kickstarter. Are you going to give the audience what they're looking for?
Oh, yeah. If you're a Monty Python's Life of Brian fan, we actually kind of copied Terry Gilliam's Look for God and these things. And granted, you're not going to see some of these things immediately, but as it goes, this book just touches on 17 different religions. We've got 50 plus characters in it. We took the time to design them all, color design them all, and it's just funny. For me, there's a lot of different ideas about religion. I'm a spiritual kind of guy, and the thing that I had to do was I had to just make sure that I was honoring the basics of who these characters were and what was going on. But the story is just sort of about how fans interact. There's Jesus is one of our kind of heels in our book, and he's depicted as Jesus, but he's meant to represent what Jesus is when you're getting your door knocked on by Jehovah's Witnesses, when people are coming with swords and knives and guns to force you to convert to Norse mythology. You think, this guy's a real jerk. What does he think he is? The Son of God? He's just going to come in here and force us to do what he wants us to do? Jesus was never about that. But when people start to represent religion instead of the figures that have been deified because of the greatness that they bring, it really is an allegory for improperly adapting things. People have improperly adapted Jesus over the years, and this is what he looks like when you do that. He looks like not really himself, a shell of who he was. So, me and my buddy Mark Polton, who's worked on projects with John Malin, you may know him, we worked on this thing for 12 years. I went through a divorce and 2 fires, and I wasn't able to fund it anymore, and we had to stop. It's been sitting there for 5 years. I tried to Indiegogo fundraise. I got shadow banned. And then I found out this Christmas that I was shadow banned, and I came back to do Kickstarter for this year, and we have already met our goal. But our goal is only to print the book, just to print it. Everything past this is to finish issue 2, 3, 4. It's a mini series to finish the graphic novel and to maybe pay a little bit of us back for some of the money we laid out. So please, if you want to support indie comics and the next generation, because I'm taking over this industry. I don't care what happens. I'm not letting another corporate stooge be at the top of this heap. I'm going to befriend Eric July. I'm going to befriend, I already know Ethan Van Sciver. I'm going to get into this world, and I'm going to make sure that not a single one of these people rises up to be the pinnacle, and that instead there is a big group of people supporting the big group of people, because we don't need any more presidents and high lords of the comic industry. We need people supporting people and artists supporting artists, and this industry to grow and propagate, and not this stupidity that we have right now with all these rock stars of the industry who are tanking it.
Absolutely. And there is a link in the video description if you would like to go and support King of Kings and our good friend Jesse Blaze Snider. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Wes. I love you, man. Appreciate you having me.